And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking the F1 Brazilian Grand Prix preview. It's getting exciting because in one corner we've got Lando Norris, the man very much on form as of Mexico. Can he continue that form? In the other corner, the other McLaren driver, Lando Norris' teammate, Oscar Piastri, very much the form man this year, up until about 5 or 6 races ago, and he seemed to have disappeared. Can Oscar Piastri find his Lando Norris Max Verstappen winning form? And speaking of Verstappen, our third person potentially for that title, can the Predator Max Verstappen close the World Championship points gap in Brazil? So before we get into all of the business of the Brazilian Grand Prix, there's something I'd like to maybe talk to you about, because on this day in Formula One, think back to 2012, the 4th of November, and a driver called Kimi Räikkönen. He reminded everyone, including us, why he called himself the Iceman. So this guy had 2 years away from the sport. He returned with a Lotus and found himself leading Yas Marina, yes, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, thanks to Lewis Hamilton going out. Now, while others were making mistakes behind him, Räikkönen was calm, cool, and completely unbothered. Then came that infamous radio message that ended up becoming an instant classic. I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone. He held off Fernando Alonso to take his first win since 2009 and Lotus's first in years. No over-the-top celebration, no drama, just vintage Kimi, a man of few words, but on this day, his driving said everything. There we go, Kimi Räikkönen. But now let's continue into our Brazilian Grand Prix preview. And even on the poster, they have Ayrton Senna. No, Colapinto. Yeah, I know. There's all these like memes, TikToks, etc. comparing the two. They do look a bit alike in certain angles. I always thought Jarno Trulli in certain angles, especially the late 90s, 1997 Jarno Trulli, very much so. Anyway, I digress, because quite rightly Bortoleto is the star of the poster, along with obviously Lewis Hamilton, an honorary Brazilian. So moving on, this is going to be a sprint race. Now, I don't expect you to understand all that, because all these countries, you know what, I couldn't find. I even went on the Sky F1 Twitter. Damn you, Sky. You didn't have any graphics that I could use. I guess that makes me the bad person. But anyway, moving on. So, if you remember, there's only one free practice session. Then we go into sprint quali. Now, I think it's 11:30 local time. 15:30 or 3:30 is the sprint quali. That's obviously Friday. Saturday, we've got the sprint at 11, qualifying a couple of hours later. Well, more than that, really, if I'm honest. 4 hours later is at 3 o'clock. And the race starting at 2. Obviously, it's going to be a late afternoon, early evening race here in the UK and Europe. So this is your driver standings going into the Brazilian Grand Prix. It was Lando Norris taking the lead by 1 point from Oscar Piastri. So Lando Norris is on 357. Oscar on 356, and the Predator Max Verstappen on a 321. So I think technically 4 races left, George Russell could win the championship. Yeah, I mean, if he wins it, it's going to be well, I tell you what, it's going to be something, isn't it? I don't think he will. So we've got Charles Leclerc in 5th on 210, Lewis Hamilton in 6th on 146, and then you got to go even more back to see Kimi Antonelli sadly on 97, 73 with Alexander Albon, Nico Hülkenberg on 41, and in the top 10, quite deservedly so, arguably the Rookie of the Year, 39 points, Isaac Hadjar. So moving on from that, when we go into Brazil, it has, obviously it's not going to be this time, but I'd like to, via Holiness on Twitter, F1 Big Data, I'd like to say up to 6 championships have indeed been decided, 5 of them consecutively. And that was 05, 06, 07, 08. So 2005 and 2006 was very much owned by Spain's own Fernando Alonso. Then you've got Kimi Räikkönen in 2007. Then you have arguably the best last lap title decider in 2000, well, ever, I think, but 2008, Lewis Hamilton. They're going to write a movie about that. 2009 was Jenson Button, although that was not the last race. And 2012 was Sebastian Vettel. I think Abu Dhabi was the last race in 2009, but there we go. So moving on from that, now the forecast for Interlagos is interesting because you've got rain and potentially lots of it. At the moment here, I'm going to show you two forecasts, just, to be fair. So we're looking at FP1, there's a 15% chance of rain. That's the highest chance of a dry session for the weekend. So that could be quite important, but if the rest of the weekend is wet, maybe not. And then sprint quali, we go in with a 45% chance of rain. Currently, that could always change. But the sprint race, 75, the highest chance of rain we've got of the weekend, a 75% chance of rain. Quali, a 45% chance of rain on the Saturday as well. And then the race with just a 20% chance of rain. I think Max Verstappen is potentially going to be licking his lips. Here we go again. In terms of rain, qualify. There is a high probability for this weekend sprint race and qualifying in Brazil. So if you look at that, Thursday, no. Friday, rain. Saturday, definitely rain. Sunday, probably not, according to this. So, as I said, two very different forecasts. It's going to be interesting. But, moving away from the forecasts, let's get into who wins this in Brazil. Who is going to have the advantage? Now, we'll get into our driver predictions in a bit. But the focus, quite understandably, is going to be on Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Lando Norris leading the championship just by 1 point. But when we look at the head-to-head race data between Norris and Piastri, I mean, Norris is faster. Canada, he was faster. This is the race pace. Austria, he was faster. Now, Canada, he was faster by, what is it, 0.005%. 0.082% in Austria, 0.077% in the UK at Silverstone. It's not good, is it? Hungary, I think, was 0.38%. Was that Hungary? Holland was 0.99%. And this is just the race pace, him being faster, even though Oscar Piastri was at peak Oscar Piastri at times as well. Yes, Norris did win Austria and Silverstone. But it was really, really close between them. But compared to like the first half of the year, as this shows kind of like the second half, middle part of the year, Lando Norris really, well, he's not doing too bad. When you look at the USA, 0.913% faster, and Mexico, 0.737% faster. So, of the last 9 races, Lando 9-0, an average of 0.227% faster. I appreciate that's not going to be reading that Oscar Piastri really wants. But here we go. Here's the scary thing for both McLaren drivers. Max Verstappen's deficit in the Drivers' Championship. When we look at it, and here's the poster here. I mean, this is absolutely frightening. So in Australia, there was a 7-point deficit. In China, it went up to 8. In Japan, it went down to 1. And then it just exponentially sort of increased until it got to 104. So in Bahrain, it was 8. In Saudi Arabia, it increased to 12. Then it increased to 32 in Miami. Went down a bit in Imola to 22 because he got that really good win. Monaco up to 25. Spain, 49. Canada went down to 43. Australia, 61. Silverstone in the UK, 69. And then Belgium, 81. Hungary, 97. And then the big kicker for Max Verstappen at his home Grand Prix, 104 points deficit at his home Grand Prix. At that point, it was absolutely disaster. Max Verstappen was all about GT racing. Had he thrown out the pram? Had he given up? Some people thought, but no. Italy went down to 94. Interesting that Azerbaijan, Baku, went down to 69. That was massive. Singapore, 63. USA went down to 40. And Mexico is down to 36. Is it doable? Absolutely. So where Lando Norris maybe and Max Verstappen are two of the on-form people. Max winning, quite several races in a row up until Mexico. Now here was, and I'm not saying bad news for Piastri, but Jacques Villeneuve, be it what you will, sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. I appreciate that's probably the same for many people. But he said Piastri's not stepping up. He was already at his limit, which is absolutely lambasting the poor guy. This was on the Sky Sports podcast. And Jack Villeneuve comes out and says, was it actually Piastri stepping up? Or Lando just wasn't on it? He kept saying he wasn't comfortable with the car. Maybe that made Piastri complacent. Lando stepped up. He is driving faster than he's been all season. So that's Jack Villeneuve on Oscar Piastri. Is it fair? Lando is driving better. I don't think... The thing about Piastri, I've had a thought about this, and I know I did a video, and maybe even contradicting myself a tiny bit. I think it takes Oscar more, and we've seen the evidence of this, it takes him longer to build up to a weekend to get up to that peak speed. But once he does, as we've seen in qualifying, he has beaten Lando sometimes quite handsomely. And it's Lando that makes the mistakes. Now, other than Baku and Azerbaijan, Oscar hasn't really made many big mistakes. He's just maybe lost the way with the setup, with the car. Maybe the updates have helped Lando Norris a tiny bit more, but both of them are really, really close. Most of the time. It's just been these most recent races. So can Oscar do it? Absolutely, he can. If he finds the form he has, he's more than capable of beating Norris and Verstappen. But the other two are equally capable of beating him and each other as well, which is going to be really interesting. So if we go all the way back to last year, and this is why many people are arguing that Max Verstappen is potentially one of the favourites to win the Brazilian Grand Prix. He went from P17 to P1, which is absolutely insane. 17 different times he broke the fastest, not the lap record, but 17 different times he broke the fastest lap on lap 6, 10, 12, 45, 47, 48, 49, 50, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 62, 64, 65, 67. I think that's a record, isn't it? He was really, really good. The Red Bull, though, when you saw on the sprint race, you knew that the Red Bull was set up absolutely sweetly. And there you go. Max Verstappen, the best driver on the day, completely took advantage of that. And in what was a legendary drive, even Eddie, the late, great Eddie Jordon, has come out and said, I've had Senna and Schumacher in my car, but what I saw from Max Verstappen in Sao Paulo was something completely off the charts. And that was what he spoke about on the 2024 Brazilian Grand Prix victory. It absolutely was. Having said that, it is a different car now. McLaren on a different car. It's going to be interesting. Yet still, no matter how good you are in the wet, you still need the car. You still need confidence. That's what the wet is all about. So it's going to be interesting. With a different car, can Max Verstappen do it in the wet sessions? I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Don't forget, Norris and Piastri are still quite good in the wet. Remember Silverstone? It was partly, I just talked about how important the car still is. Verstappen didn't really have the best setup in the wet at Silverstone then. It was Lando, Norris and Piastri that pretty much dominated. So it is going to be interesting. And here, when you look at here, I can't really zoom in anymore. But the different 24 winners to the 25 winners. I mean, we had obviously both Ferrari drivers doing it, both Mercedes drivers. Here, we essentially have Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen and George Russell. Is this going to be the first Ferrari World Championship, the first the year since 2021 that Ferrari do not win a race? That would be terribly sad, wouldn't it? That would be terribly sad. So, but let's now have a look at the Interlagos circuit, shall we? Here it is in all its glory. It has it's 48 races. Been here since 1973, 15 corners. We'll get into more of the stats in a bit, and we're going to have a look at the actual track itself in a second as well. But here we go. As you can see here, here's the first sector. As you start, you go down the CNRS. You do have DRS in this part, and then you've got obviously DRS detection zone number 1. Down turn number 3 to turn number 4. That's the infamous where basically Max Verstappen tried to, let's be fair, take out Lewis Hamilton when he realised that it was absolutely desperate to stop Lewis passing. Lewis did in the end a fantastic pass. Verstappen had driven a really solid race then, but then again, Verstappen was, to be fair, last year was passing everyone everywhere, wasn't he? So into turn 4 and turn 5. But what's really interesting about when you look at sector 1 and the final sector, the one in yellow, they're very fast sectors, but you can't have too low a downforce because you've got to compete with this sector here. And as Martin Brundle used to say, the middle sector, the blue sector, from turns 4 to turn number 11. The issue with that sector is simply the more time you spend in the corners, the more time you lose, the more times you can gain. And that's sometimes why this middle sector is really, really interesting. Can it decide pole position? Potentially. And how do you set your car up? Because is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? Hopefully by the weekend, we'll have much more of an accurate weather forecast in terms of that. But let's get and have a look at the track, shall we? So here we go. Let's load up the Interlagos track. No, I can assure you, it's definitely not. It's definitely not the Mexican Grand Prix. Let's put a stop to that. Where is it? This is absolutely disaster. It says Mexican Grand Prix, but it absolutely isn't. Bear with me 2 seconds. Go away. Go. Oh my God. There we go. It's gone. It's gone. We can relax. Okay. Moving on. So let's now have a look at the race, shall we? That is the. I've lost my track of thought. The race that is the Brazilian Grand Prix. So here is the track guide. We are in sort of like Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari, I guess, if you want to play it at that. Going down, our DRS is very much open, and here we go through. Now, what's interesting about this corner is you want to brake pretty earlier than you think, because you're going to gain so much time going through the center S. Absolute full bananas on the left here. Michael Schumacher crashed it quite badly, didn't he, in 2003. Aquaplane, you get a river of water, at least you used to. But here we go, the Lewis Hamilton Max Verstappen corner. As we go around there, I believe that's turn numero 4, and we then carry on. And now we are in the interesting sector in turn 6, 7, and 8. It's like a multiple apex turn, and then the turns just seem to get tighter. After that, we're in turn number 8 and turn number 9. You've got to be really patient here. You really want to be patient as you get on the power. And now we're coming towards the end of the track into turn 10. And once again, yes, we have seen passes here side by side, but not normally as we go into turn number 11, 12, and 13. Yeah, this one being the Is That Glock corner. On the power, you want to get the on power really smooth. You want to get a really good exit, understandably, because now you are pretty much full throttle all the way with the DRS wide open until you get back to the center S, until you're braking for that center S. But here we go. So let's now have a look, shall we? Now, when you come here, this is the center S. This is kind of roughly where we're gonna brake. Most people are gonna brake quite late. Obviously, in the wet, it's gonna be a bit different. But what's interesting here is you can, when racing, take two very different lines when you're defending yourself. You got the outside. You can keep it on the outside. Normally, though, if you do that, someone's just going to run you wide. Now, if you go on the inside, which is obviously if you keep it on the inside, you can sometimes push them wide and be a bit cheeky, but not too cheeky. Verstappen got a penalty there, didn't he? A few years ago. This here is the Lewis Hamilton Max Verstappen corner again. On the inside, on the outside, you can very much do it. But again, if you're going to pass on the outside, you have to. This whole stupid apex rule is understandably going to come into place, which is not good at all, is it? No, that's absolutely not what we want. But it is what it is, and you got to make sure you absolutely send it and make sure your car is ahead of the apex. Now, obviously, as we are now into this middle part of the track, it is all about how much grip you have, and you're not going to have much because this is a high downforce circuit, but you're going to have some, simply because it is so tight and you can lose so much time in this part of the track if your car's not set up right, if you're not comfortable with it, if you're not confident on it. And full bananas now. You can even see in this car, it's a bit wishy-washy in terms of trying to get on the power, because we do have a bit of low downforce. Now we did mess up there. Absolutely the last corner. What you want to do, I'm going to wind it back a bit. What you really want to do as you're coming out here is you want to absolutely brake super early, not too early that someone sails past you, because if you mess this corner up like we did there, I mean, you could potentially lose 2, 3, 4 tenths of a second. Then you're losing that time all the way down. Now, in particular, not only would that be bad in qualifying, but in the race, you've done that, and the guy behind you's on DRS, or potentially he's already caught you even before he opened the DRS, meaning it's pretty much passing is going to be absolutely inevitable. Sadly. But there we go. So let's have a look then at the track stats, shall we? So, Interlagos, track stats. As we've already alluded to, it does have 15 corners. There are 71 laps. The track length is 4.309 kilometres. But when you look at the race length, as we know, they're normally over 300. This one being 305.879. The circuit opened in 1940, but as I've already mentioned, the first F1 race here. It was 1973. It holds 41 races. Lewis Hamilton in 2018 has the track record, a 107.281. Lap record, though, is a Mercedes of the same year, but Valtteri Bottas, a 110.540. Now, since 1973, I've mentioned the 41 races. There have been 25 different winners. Interestingly, none of them currently have the record of the most races won at Interlagos. No, that is Michael Schumacher. He's had more victories at the circuit than any other driver, with 4. Now, from the current grid, 3 previous winners of the Grand Prix held at Interlagos, both Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, have won here the most times from drivers on that grid, with 3 victories apiece. So one of them, I guess more likely to be Max Verstappen, could potentially equal that Michael Schumacher record of 4. Now, George Russell also, remember, took his maiden win here all the way back in 2022. It seems a long time ago, doesn't it? German drivers, though, interestingly, are the most successful here, with 9 wins apiece. That's not bad, is it? 2 Grand Slams have been recorded. 2 drivers have recorded Grand Slams at the Interlagos circuit. Jacques Lafitte took pole, set fastest lap and led every lap, and Mika Häkkinen did the same feat in 1998. Jacques Lafitte in 1979. But Ferrari have the most wins of any team at Interlagos. 9, I believe. Ferrari the most wins with 9, but that's 1 ahead of McLaren. Is that going to change this year? Who knows? There have been 10 occasions on which a team has recorded 1-2 finishes. Most recently in 2022. Yep, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes. Ferrari, Benetton, Williams, McLaren, Red Bull, and obviously the previously mentioned Mercedes are the 6 teams who have taken successive victories at Interlagos. So there we go. Very interesting, good stuff there. But let's now get into our driver preview, shall we? And the guy that's going to impress us least, as usual, is going to be Lance Stroll. If you remember, I'm not going to show it because I laugh too much every time. If you remember last year, it was destruction of race by gravel trap. Yes, he's the only driver I know of that's been on concrete, could quite easily get back on the race, and then decides to drive on the gravel trap to end his race. Next up, we have got the Ayrton Senna cosplay, Franco Colapinto. I hope he can do well. There are rumours that Alpine are going to re-sign him. Why? I know that sounds a bit harsh, because based on the current evidence, I'm sure there's better drivers out there. He looked amazing in Williams, and didn't he? This time, well, initially when he started with Williams, Franco Colapinto coming out of the blue, Alpine really wanted him, and it's just a bit, I don't know, underwhelming. I think you take him and Jack Doohan, and it's not really much of a difference between them, except that Franco Colapinto has had more of an opportunity. When I heard the rumours that Jack Doohan was going to replace Franco, I thought, oh, that is a really, really good idea. I think that that could work really well. It will give them a chance to assess Jack. Maybe they choose for him or Franco or somebody else in the future. But alas, no. Next up, a guy that's also struggling, and many think he's going to be losing his F1 drive, is Liam Lawson. I would love, now don't get me wrong, when I try and do the list and who I think is, from worst to best, I want them to do well. I don't dislike any of the F1 drivers. I'm just being honest about my feelings. And my feelings say about Liam Lawson, he's just too inconsistent. On his days, he can be amazing. But there we go. So, next up from Liam Lawson, I'm going to put this man here. He might well start at the back. We know how rubbish the Alpine is. And it's going to be interesting if they're even going to score another point. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. Part of me thinks, with the chaos, if the Brazilian Grand Prix is wet or the sprint is wet and it's one of those chaotic races, they're absolutely going to have a chance. Because you get those races. Yeah, but still. And next up, we've got Esteban Ocon in the Haas. He's been absolutely ruined recently by Behrman. Will that continue? Well, I think for Ocon's sake, he's absolutely going to hope it's not going to continue. But I can't see anything else, if I'm honest, to do that. Now we've got Nico Hülkenberg. The Stake F1, as I've said before, it was one of the worst cars. It isn't anymore. It's not the best car by a long way, but when they get that setup right, as you've seen, they're in Q3. Can they do it? Yes, they can. But the midfield is absolutely so packed. And there we go, Carlos Sainz is the on-form man at Williams at the moment. Alex Albon really struggling. But I've got him just one place behind Alex Albon because I'm predicting an Alex Albon revenge. Not really on Carlos Sainz, but the fact that the people are suggesting that Williams, the development has gone towards Carlos Sainz. And that would potentially, yeah, the evidence is there. But I do feel that his teammate is going to fight back. I mean, he's shown at the beginning of the year how amazing he was. Now, could it also be that finally Carlos Sainz has got used to the Williams? Very similar to the way Lewis Hamilton is now seemingly getting used to that Ferrari. Absolutely. But it's going to be really interesting at Brazil. It's a track they both know really well. It's a track that Alex Albon maybe should have got a podium. And then Lewis Hamilton happened, sadly. But there we go. So I've got Gabriel Bortoleto, the first driver to drive Brazil as his home Grand Prix since Felipe Massa. So I think, I do predict, because it's his home Grand Prix, I think he could do what I would love him to get some points. I really would. Willie, it's going to be tough, isn't it? It's going to be tough for Bortoleto. But I think he's going to be better than Hülkenberg simply because of home advantage. He's going to boost him. Normally, when you have a driver and the home Grand Prix, it either really boosts them or it completely destroys them. Many people used to say Barrichello struggled at home, but then he got with it. I mean, think about it. In the Stewart, in the Ferrari, he led multiple times to the Brazilian Grand Prix. He was just absolutely cursed. He really was. He really was. So Yuki Tsunoda, many think this man is also going to lose his Red Bull seat. He has been getting closer and closer to Max at the moment. And I'd make an argument, when you're looking at a couple of tenths, this time last year, I think he's closer to Max than Sergio Perez was, which is a plus. The problem is, for Yuki Tsunoda, people don't see it as much that way because the grid itself is so close together. And therein lies the issue. You look at qualifying, it used to be 2-3 tenths. It's now like 1/10, hundredths. And he has, on several occasions, been popped out of qualifying by a few hundredths, which is really frustrating for him. But I think in terms of time, when you look at some of the races, he has been closer to Verstappen than Sergio Perez has. You've got, here we go, Rookie of the Year. I would love him to get points. I think he will. It's a circuit that I think would really, really suit him. And yeah, I don't really have any more to say about Isaac Hadjar. Oliver Behrman, the man, the on-form man, the winner of the driver of the race in Mexico. Yeah, this is, I would love him to carry on. I don't think he's going to get a fourth place. Could he get points? Absolutely. And what's really important for Oliver Behrman, I think he'll be fighting for points. If that car's good, it's going to be wet. So it's going to, if it is wet, it's going to be a really interesting test for Ollie. Now, what he needs to do now, between now and the end of the year, because people are already talking, this is the guy that's going to replace Lewis Hamilton, maybe. He just needs to not make any mistakes. Don't do anything silly, and just do what he's doing consistently, out qualifying his teammate Ocon. I don't think anyone predicted he'll be that much better than Ocon, but he really is. So next up, we've got Fernando Alonso. Yes, I think he'll be doing quite well here. The two straights I think he'll struggle. In the Aston Martin. We know it's a really draggy car, but you've got that middle section, and you've got the fact, excuse me, I'm trying not to burp, and you've got the fact that this race could potentially be wet, and he's quite handy in the wet, and I think Fernando Alonso will most certainly be looking at potential points, as will this guy here, but he's like the least out of the top 4 teams, simply because he's the rookie. He was good in Mexico. He was solid in Mexico. I hope that continues. This will be another test for him, another chaotic Grand Prix. And I think unlike Bortoleto, Behrman, Hadjar, he's in a high-profile team, in a high-profile seat where he replaced Lewis Hamilton. And I think the pressure got to him. I think he's sorting himself out now. Mercedes obviously have very good people at the team, but I can't see him beating the likes of Russell, the 2 Ferrari drivers, the 2 McLaren drivers, and Verstappen, sadly. In the race, if you get an accident, maybe. I guess we'll see. Hopefully, though, I eat my words and this guy gets pole and it'll be amazing. The same with George Russell. Again, the Mercedes in the past has been really good at 2022 in Brazil, where they won. But there's also been years, I think it was 23, where they were eating up their tyres. They just weren't quite good enough. And unless they get a sweet setup in what was a very small practice session, which they did in 22, I think Mercedes are going to struggle the most. Now, Ferrari are looking not too bad. They are the on-form people in a way, outside of obviously McLaren and Max Verstappen. They technically have the third best car, Verstappen. You know, with that Red Bull, once again, I've always said it's a bespoke Red Bull for Max Verstappen. That's not to take anything away from him, but it isn't, understandably so. But he does make magic in that car. The two McLaren boys, I think, have a better car. So for either Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton to do well, I think someone needs to make a mistake. But I do feel Lewis Hamilton may well have the advantage here over Leclerc. I think he's getting to know that Ferrari better. He's confident. In Mexico, I can't help but feel he possibly would have beaten Leclerc. With his race pace had he not been given that 10-second penalty, I feel. And let's be honest, Leclerc completely yeeted it anyway. Cheated over the grass to get ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Nothing was said about it, which was ridiculous. But Ferrari aren't going to protest their drivers, are they? But yeah, I think it's going to be one of the stronger weekends for Lewis Hamilton. Podium, unlikely, I think, for a podium. Something's going to have to happen in the race. Will it? Potentially. Toss a coin, maybe, but yeah, for the Ferrari podium. So I've got Piastri on our podium, but obviously there's two people ahead of him. The two significant people are his two title contenders. It wouldn't surprise me if we have a Piastri win or a Piastri pole. It's just that I think the other two are the current on-form drivers. Now, all Piastri needs to do, though, is have a solid first practice and then, you know, sort it out in sprint qualifying. That is very interesting. He's starting to put the pressure on the other two. Will that happen? I'm not too sure. So you've got obviously Lando Norris here as well. I think it's either going to be him or Verstappen potentially fighting for the win, fighting for the race. I've put Norris as a slightly least favourite than Max Verstappen simply because of what Max Verstappen did last year, the fact that it can be wet. And I feel that this and maybe Las Vegas are the two races that may favour Red Bull, or at least give Red Bull the chance to beat McLaren. Many are suggesting that the McLaren car is still the best. But I think in the hands of Max Verstappen with the Red Bull, I think he may have an advantage at Brazil. We know they love the straights, and Brazil has let's be fair, it's got quite a lot of maximum throttle, basically, Sector 1 and Sector 2, which is why I think Max Verstappen is going to win over Lando Norris. Lando Norris, we know that McLaren can be quite draggy. Are they going to have to compromise the setup? Maybe, and they won't have in Mexico, where they were clearly the fastest. It is high. The altitude is high in Brazil as well, but it's not as high as it was in Mexico. If it's dry, I think probably McLaren. But when you bring the wet into it, and the fact that the sprint qualifying wet, there's a good chance. Every session there is a chance of it being wet. In particular, I think the maximum one, the sprint race, wasn't it? With I think was it 75%, but one of them has a really high chance. And then you've got to start to look at Max Verstappen. He's really solid in the wet, providing that Red Bull car can give him the confidence it gave him, for example, last year. So I think Max Verstappen, just going into the weekend, is just favourite over Lando Norris and over Oscar Piastri. So it's going to be really interesting, isn't it? So there you go. There are your predictions. Once again, we don't think Lance Stroll is going to get any points. I want to be wrong. I really do want to be wrong. Am I wrong? I don't know. I don't think I'll be. I guess we'll have to see. But anyway, if you made it to the end, please consider giving us a subscription or subscribe if you are not already, if you think we've earned it. But until then, thank you very much. We will speak to you soon. You just making it to the end is we're not worthy. You just clicking on this video is we're not worthy. We'll speak to you soon. But above all else, stay safe.